Hey guys, welcome back. Welcome back. Patrick, I don't know if you saw this. We changed the name to the show. It's Get Your Fish On now. Now no longer Fish in Florida Radio, yeah. Get Your Fish On. We have an iCast 2020 special with one of the award-winning best of show for the Freshwater lure, which I couldn't have been happier about. But he's also a good friend, and we've been talking nonstop. Luckily, I wasn't recording any of our talking, but I'm very happy to introduce. He's not only a Hall of Famer, named one of the 20 best anglers in the world. Think about that: 20 best anglers in the world. Hall of Famer, world record holder, lure manufacturer genius, Patrick Sebile. Patrick, good morning. How are you, man?
Good morning, my good friend, and good morning, everybody. If you can recognize me, because, well, yeah. I changed a bit the landscape around my head recently.
I didn't even ask you that before. When did you decide to get the haircut? What was it during this whole Corona deal?
Yeah, it's very recently, but that's a very specific deal. You know, for many years now, I've been used to travel for my work. And especially when I go to Asia after, spending 2 weeks in factories and stuff like that, that's really I mean, it's fun because I work on my design and that's a big fun. But by itself, you're in southern China or you're in, Philippines and different countries. And really, when you spend that time, you're just working with engineers and stuff like that. So after dinner, once in a trip, just like to have an evening of relax. And the thing is, especially in southern China, they wash your hair and make the haircut. They put you on a kind of a bed. And please, guys, if any of you think about anything that doesn't relate with cutting your hair, you are wrong. That's not the case at all. I promise. I really do promise. So they put you on that kind of bed. They wash your hairs. They cut your hairs and everything. And it's super. It's so relaxing that half the time I fall asleep before they're done. And I'm used to do that, and as I go, 4 to 6 times a year, for many, many years, I just have my hair kind of cut, all the time. But now with the coronavirus, I've not traveled, believe it or not, since December.
Yeah.
That's the first time in probably 20 years or 25 years. Because my life has been so much related to travel, whether it was for product design or for guiding when I was guiding, back in the day. So I was literally traveling every month or every other month, sometimes 2 or 3 times a month. So it has not happened to me. So for so many years to stay, not jump into a flight to flight 8 or 12 hours or 16 hours somewhere in the world. So my hair were just getting long and long. And, I got to say, I have that kind of hair where it shows the wisdom.
You have a nice head. You have like a nice round head. Mine would be oblong because it's so big.
Like that, and I was working a bit outside. My hair was like that. I was working on site. I live next to a lake, putting a little platform so I can enjoy working a bit when the weather is nice. On my laptop, I can cast a lure. I have a kayak right there ready to go. And it was a bit windy. My hair were in all kind of crazy. And, I saw my kids and we were having a bit fun of that. So I was like, okay, it's really time for me to cut the hairs because they were that long.
Yeah.
And I didn't say a thing. I cut my hairs. And next thing you know, when I went to see my kids, my son saw me right away. And right away, hey, daddy, And really didn't come with that much. It took him several minutes before I start to ask about why I cut and stuff like that. But my daughter was in her bedroom and I went silently to the bedroom, opened the door. The door was not totally closed, so I opened like this. And I watched her for probably 2 or 3 minutes. She was playing. And at one point, she saw feet. So she looked at me. And you can see the face of the one who have no clue who that person is who's looking at her. And he took her a good 15 seconds like this, staring at me, eyes to eyes. I was keeping that face like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then suddenly, daddy! And then she was asking me a ton of questions. Why do you cut the hair? And she was like, oh, I don't like that. I like longer hairs and stuff like that. So I know if you look on, I don't know. Yeah, if you see the packaging of my lure, you see.
Oh, yes, that's right.
What's normally my face,
Well, let's talk about.
But these times, July, it's good.
Oh,
Sure.
that's good. Okay, well, how was iCast for you? First, let me just say congratulations for what was it? Best of show freshwater soft plastic, correct?
That's correct. Yes, with this this guy. That's called the Dart prop. We're gonna see that in detail in a second. Yeah. So, well, two things very different: the show itself and the award. Of course, probably like you, I never missed one issue of the iCast for the last probably like 20 plus years, maybe 22 or 24 years
Yeah.
in a row, whether it was in Las Vegas, now for many years in Orlando.
Yep.
Uh, I have the same
Yeah.
back scratching device. So it was very, very unique and weird that this year that was just a remote thing. That was not a feeling of iCast. I got to say honestly, iCast is a great time because designing lure, yes, it's my job, it's my work, it's my business. I make my income out of that. But number one, it's my life passion. And that's why I created Band of Anglers. And that's why for the last 32 years, I made a living off the fishing industry because that's my passion, first of all.
Mm-hmm.
So not being at the iCast, not interacting with people was really something I miss dearly. And the iCast, the remote online iCast was really not giving that feeling. And there's nothing to say against the ASA. They did their best, and I think they did a good job. I just say, simply stating that was not the iCast feeling. Meeting the people we love to see again, not just customer, but customer we have relationship that have some friendship side, that have the passion side to it. There are people that every year we don't talk to each other for 1 year, but then we see each other at the iCast and we have a good 20 minutes where it's really genuinely, deeply cool and good to be with those people. So that did not happen. But we have, I believe, a decent return. I know at the end of the show, the iCast, the ASA send us all the data about how many people click on our link, and that was a bit more than 2,000 people who click on our link. So
that's impressive.
And I'm sure the award have to play into that.
Yeah. How surprised? Well, tell us first. I have a picture of it that I can put up over myself. Tell us first. Well, if you don't know, the Dart prop came out 2 years ago? Didn't we?
DartSpin.
DartSpin came out 2 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. So the DartSpin. Yes, a DartSpin, the 7-inch in that case.
And that came out a couple years ago, and now you have the Dart prop. So tell us a little bit about the Dart prop, if you could. You're full screen, by the way.
Of course. And cool. Well, and here's the thing. So I will very quickly speak of the DartSpin because it directly linked with the Dart prop.
Yes.
It's very intricate together. So many, many years ago, I'm talking 20, 25 years ago, when I was the lure designer for MEPS and Mr. Twister, I came with the idea of a soft plastic body and a blade in the tail. And I made the prototypes, I field test them, they were great. And I came with the project to my boss at the time, who was based in France. The worldwide boss of MEPS, Mr. Twister, was in France. And when I bring the project, he refused it because he didn't want to have one lure that will be a cross between the two brands, Mr. Twister being about soft plastic and MEPS being about blades. And at the time, I have only a regular soft plastic, but I found a solution to secure the blade and stuff like that. So it stayed to rest for a number of years. And later with Sebile, when I have the stick shad, I have the hard stick shad, and I came with the stick shad hollow, which was the same shape, but a soft plastic hollow body. And one of the rigging that I show, and there were articles and video made about that, I was showing how to put a swivel inside the body of the stick shad hollow to have a blade in the tail. But that was not out of the back. People have to do that by themselves.
Yes.
And then, how was it? And then several years ago, always the weak part was the soft plastic itself.
Yeah.
That was always a problem. And years ago, reading a science magazine, when I was younger, one of the, I was an engineer, but I loved research and stuff like that. And so I always keep reading books and magazines, basically, about science and discoveries. And I read about that company who created a plastic, a type of material that's part of what's called the superplastics family. And when I read about the specificity of that material, I realized that was really interesting for some lure, for some application that regular soft plastic cannot achieve. And that's where I was like, my old idea of that soft plastic body and the blade in the tail will combine and come together. And really that plastic, that material was really key. And then I created I patented, I'm not sure if it's very easy to see, but I have a kind of spring inside.
Yes.
So some people will say, well, there's some spring that you can screw into soft plastic. Yeah, but the difference here is this is put into the mold. So when you inject the plastic, that grabs on that spring.
Yes.
And that's why it makes it very long lasting.
Yes.
Very, very long lasting. And it was key. So thanks to that, that was opening me for a range of applications. And that's why when we came with the DartSpin, I believe many people saw the huge benefit of a DartSpin, long-lasting soft plastic, the blade in the tail, so two different type of action. We came with range, and that's currently definitely our best-selling lure. Now, from there, thanks to that body, thanks to the material itself, thanks to that patent with that screw that's put inside the mold before we inject, to make you understand better why it's important. When you have a regular soft plastic, as people know, you can pour the soft plastic yourself. You know, you can put some. When you have a broken curly tail, for example, you can put that in a Pyrex glass. You put that in your microwave for a minute or two. It melts, and then you can pour back into a mold. Well, this kind of material, which have great possibilities, must be injected like hard plastic, like basically, like a lure like this.
Yeah.
It takes 200 tons, for those who are aware about injection and stuff like that, it takes 200 tons of pressure to inject such kind of material into a mold, which is the same as hard plastic.
I didn't know that.
So because of that, so that's why that's not something you can do by yourself. And that's why it makes that patent so relevant, because as this is in the mold and we inject with 200 tons of pressure, that material, I mean, it's not indestructible, but compared to a regular soft plastic, it's so much stronger. It lasts so much. I mean, we really have several people, including myself now, who caught more than 100 bass on one.
Yeah.
So that tells you how long-lasting is that material that we call soft turf. So that's why, with that, I knew it opened to me a wide range of possibilities, and I developed several shapes and actions thanks to that. And also it's buoyant. So that's why one of the ideas almost since day one was also to come with a lure that have props, because the blade and the prop are two very, very, very different type of parts into a lure that creates very different underwater signal and wave, underwater wave. And that's why they attract the fish, both of them, but also a bit in different ways.
Yes.
And that's why having this or that is not almost the same thing. Well, they're both made of metal and they both spin. But in one case, you have a blade that turns on itself. It's very tight. So the signature behind the blade is very tight. When on the other side, when you have a prop like this, in fact, it makes a big, much bigger volume of swirl and commotion, both under the water and on the top, depends the model or the way you retrieve it. And that's why, so the body, if you only look at the body, it's exactly the same as the DartSpin.
Yeah.
The body alone, the plastic and the screw. Now, what differs is really what we have in the tail. So I tried many different options, and I ended up to come with this. So I just want to make sure you guys can see that very well.
I have a question.
So you have that swivel. Sure, please.
Okay, because I know way too much about these lures to make that. We talk a lot on the original DartSpin. Does that blade? Is the reason to have the blade to give it flash so it looks like there's another fish following it? Or is it to give it flash, to give it commotion, to make a bat, of course, to make a bass strike, but to make the commotion in the water?
So it goes in parallel with three things, in fact. Because the flash definitely is one thing that quite often, not always, but quite often attract fish. And I believe every angler, every lure angler knows you have some day where the fish are super finicky, where you need to have lure that have minimum action, sometimes even no action at all. And in that case, flash is no good. But that's why there's not one lure that fits every situation. But on day in, day out, a blade like this, definitely when it spins, create flash, and that's one of the attraction. So that's one thing. But beside of that, you really have something that it's not seen, which is the most important, and that's really the commotion, the turbulences, the swirl, which are very closely connected to the point number 3, which is the underwater signature. So why is that the one thing that for us as humans and anglers, obviously, is not the one thing that's the most apparent? Well, flash, we can see that. You cast this lure, you retrieve in the water, you see the blade or you see the prop spinning, you see the flash. So yeah, but in fact, we humans are much, much more visual than the fish are. The fish, 99% of the fish have something that is seen on some and not so well or not at all on others. That's called the lateral line. And I know you, Steve, are very aware of that, but some of the viewers might not be or not very familiar. Lateral line is nothing less and nothing short than a natural radar that fish have.
Yeah.
That means when you take a fish, the best example is a snook. You see that black line on the snook. Well, that's exactly where the lateral line is. Lateral line is not the fact that's black, no, but when you look at with a microscope, you will see a number, and I'm speaking of hundreds of very teeny holes going through the scales. And in the end of those holes, there's a system that is basically connected to their spine. And that goes back to their brain. These teeny holes, in fact, help to feel the water pressure around them. That is why a fish facing the current can feel a bait fish like a mullet or a sardine swimming behind them. Not because they see it, because they feel it thanks to the radar that they naturally have built into their bodies.
Yeah,
and that's where it's amazing.
So
the fish, that's the key thing. That's why 90% of the time, that's the number one thing that drives a fish first to find your lure, and second, to swim to the lure to attack it. The eyes are only used on a much shorter span when the fish is closer to adjust the attack, to avoid him to bite here or there, but to bite there. That is why the eyesight is here, and that is why, I'm sorry, I know a number of people will not be happy or not be okay with me when I say that. That is why, to my point of view, the color of the lure is the least important. I'm not saying not important at all.
I know.
I'm saying the least important in most cases. Not always.
I know. It's you realize it's confidence though. You get confident with a certain color, and in our little tiny brains, we think that. I've told that to people. Do you know that? Yeah. And people go, no, color has and I'm like, I'm telling you, I know a guy that knows a lot more than us, and he's telling me this. I'm going to believe it. We've had a bunch of people. Mark Tomlinson from Missouri asked, are there any plans in the future to make a scented DartSpin or leave it as is?
So.
Wait a minute. Should we call Paul and ask if we're allowed to talk about this? Hold on, I'll text.
We're all good.
I know, I'm joking.
We're all clear. No, but my answer. So, thank you very much for your question. It's an extremely good question. I'm not trying to open a can of box, but I really want to answer your question very well. The vast majority of the scented baits on the market, scented elements that are mostly a gimmick. Why? Well, because most of the plastic material that are used do not allow the particles that are injected inside the plastic to exit or to exude the plastic, to be more accurate. So when you take a new lure out of the bag that have scent into it, it will first release some scent trail because, well, typically inside of the bag, you have the scent that's there, and you have some particles that are on the very top of the plastic. So those will be released. But after a while, in most of the soft plastic, there will be no more scent to go outside, unless, for example, a fish such as a pike, for example, bites into the plastic, and now because it cuts into the plastic, it will help to release more. And that's why there are very few. And to be very honest, serve that Mr. Twister has a dead line of soft plastic that's called Exude.
Yes.
I'm not fully sure they still produce them today.
I don't think they do.
But I was part of the team who worked and developed those, and we worked with a scientist at the time. I'm talking 25 years ago, probably, because there was a perfect understanding that the regular soft plastic do not release the scent that is inside. So the effect and the lasting of the release of the tray of the scent is extremely limited. And that's why most of the time it's more efficient to have an outside scent that you keep putting on to release. So that's why the Exude material was fantastic in that regard, that it was truly releasing. That was not a regular soft plastic. And we were making experience as far as we are going through the development process, not just of the lure shape and action, but the plastic itself. By leaving a number of samples, a number of days, we will weight them before we put them in a jar. We'll put them in a jar and we'll open some after day 1 and weight them again. And some over day 2, day 10, day 30. And every jar we will open with a lure that have a number of days of staying in the water, definitely the lure will be lighter and lighter and lighter by proving it was releasing in its entire life the scent. So that's why again, I'm not trying to open a kind of worms here, but to be honest, when I answer that question, 99% of the scented lures, in fact, after you fish them for 5 minutes, they don't release any more scent. It's total BUL, whatever, the end of the world. For the people who claim they release for 1 hour, no, false, absolutely false. That's why I keep putting on. So this material is no different. If I were to inject plastic scent with that soft plastic, the scent will not exude outside of the plastic. But now you look, and what do you see? The cut and the shape of the cut is perfectly made that now you can take the scent of your choice, whether it's an artificial scent or you take yourself shrimp or you take yourself mullet guts, squid, whatever, and thanks to the design in the back, it's very easy to put your scent here, and now you have a constant flow, which will not last forever because as the particle will go with the flow, at some point there's no more. But you can manage exactly the scent you want and put that, and it's easy to see when there's no more, when you need to put more and stuff like that. So that's my answer to how to use those bait and have the benefit of scent with them.
Okay, cool. And I'm sure Mark appreciates it. Okay, let's get back to the DartSpin prop, because I think this is a fantastic bait. Not to mention, it's an award winner. I mean, that's the greatest thing about it. So I'm trying to. So tell us why did you start using? Why did you create such? Why did you add this? I guess that's the best way to put it.
So definitely because the action of props is one of the most effective action on predator fish. And that's a very proven record. I've been fishing a lot with lures with props, both in fresh and saltwater. And I had a lot of result, both on top water and both underneath the water, because I know a few years ago, the spy bait became a sensation. But in fact, that type of bait existed for a very long time. Just in the past, that was more handmade or small company made them. In France, for example, in Europe, we have a company that's named Rago that have a lure that was called the Big, which was inspired by a Miro lure, in fact, because I know the guy who bring that to the French market. If one day he saw a guy fishing with a Miro lure with props on it and catching European sea bass, and that's what gave him the idea to make his own. So I've been fishing with those a lot. I have picture of me for a long time ago. I have one of my world record fish that I remember catching on lure with props. So I have a long time confidence in the fact that props are some of the most effective things. Now, here's a fact. props works very well on almost every single predator fish in both fresh and saltwater. Here's another fact. To this day, as far as I know, I never find a very well-made and effective soft plastic bait that were put together with props.
Yeah.
The most use I can see was, especially for walleye angler, they love to troll. They have those rigs with 1, 2, 3 single or treble hooks sometimes. They may put a live night crawler or a soft plastic, and there will be one blade in front. And with MEPS, by the way, or Mr. Twister, many years ago, we have this kind of rigs for walleye angler who want to troll, with down riggers and stuff like that, and put their soft plastic worm, and was working very well. But it was very limited. There was really, as far as I know, and I have a very big collection of lure, and I, of course, don't know every lure on the planet, but I know a pretty decent number of them. So I never find any single time a soft plastic that was really very well made, that was a lure we really can use as a casting and retrieving bait. Now, the other thing was, when you have a hard lure with 1, 2, 3 treble hooks, 4 treble hooks, I've seen some for musky, big one like that with 4 treble hooks. Mm-hmm. Well, when you hook your fish and the fish fight and dive into the grass or the weeds, very often because that's one of the best spots to fish a lure with props. Mm-hmm. Not only, but that's one of the best places. So when your big bass or when your snook or redfish dive into the weeds or into the grass, and the other 1 or 2 treble hook grabs into the weeds and the grass, very often you lose your fish, because there's so much resistance from all that grass that the fish, shaking the head, can pull the hook apart and go free. So that's one of the reasons that when we fish with a single hook with a soft plastic, first we can fish into the heavy cover with very little risk of snagging, and that's definitely the case here, just with a hidden hook, mm-hmm. That's in there. And once you hook the fish, the only hook is in the fish mouth. So there's no extra hook that hangs there and that can grab. So that's why it was very important to me to be able to achieve properly a very good casting and sometimes trolling. I can see the salmon and steelhead anglers in the north, fishing with that bait as a trolling bait with down riggers and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So that also have that benefit, because when the steelhead come and jump, they are very good at splitting lures away. So one big single hook grabs much more of the fish lip, no matter the species, tarpon, snook, redfish, bass, you name it. Peacock bass, that would be fantastic for peacock bass as well. And that was a very big point. Now, there was much more to that. There was the fact that body, that plastic, look, it's very lifelike. Many soft plastic are very soft. And typically, why people use soft plastic bait, and many people don't realize that, is because when they are very soft, they allow you to put the hook point into the soft plastic. So when you have the bite, so they are very weedless because you hook the plastic itself. And when you set the hook, they are so tender that the hook point exit and hook the fish. Mm-hmm. But in many cases, the action is not best. So here I have a plastic that's very stiff. Look at that. Look, the tail. The tail is very stiff. But because it's very stiff, the energy that's created when the prop work give energy to the body. And now the body vibrate, and in fact, great action. It's not simply a prop bait, that's also a build minnow. That means because the blade spin on the tail, it brings the body to move about half an inch sideways, like a build minnow. And we all know how good the action of a build minnow is. So it's really 2 baits inside of one. And that is why when you look at the prop, look, the prop is not just next to the tail, because I tried different lengths to see where can I find the best action. And in fact, by giving some distance here, that was helping to have really the greatest action I can get, was thanks to that. So that one is the sinking model, and we have also the topwater model. So I will go more in detail in each.
Okay, hold on. Marcella says hello, by the way.
Hey, Marcella.
And then Dave Harrell from, Dave, Marlin Magazine. Yeah,
sure.
Dave. I think he asked, what size and shape hook do you recommend with it? But those are going to come pre-rigged, correct?
They're going to come pre-rig, and at some point we're going to sell the bodies alone.
Okay.
So if you look, those two have two different hooks. And again, it's because when I field test, I want to make sure every model have exactly what they need on. So that guy is the sinking model.
Okay.
It's a 5-inch long, basically. The hook is a 5.0. That's an extra wide gap hook. Reason is that it's very important. What I'm going to show you is very unique and part of the success of that bait. I believe most people here knows about mass transfer. Mass transfer is typically found in hard lures, especially minnows, where you have a weight that moves to the tail. That's why it's called mass transfer. So when you want to cast, you have more weight into the tail. But when you go with soft plastic lures, typically you have a jig head in the front, and that's it. So when you want to cast, the lure don't fly. I mean, the lure have to turn, when you cast it, you have to turn in the air compared to the line to cast with the head first. So you lose, when the lure turns in the air, you always have some friction, you lose some energy, that means you lose some distance. Well, what you see here is a mass transfer.
Ah,
That means,
that little weight is moving from front to back.
Exactly. So when you want to cast, the weight comes in the tail, so helping you for a longer and more accurate cast. Now, that's not it. As soon as the lure hits the water, automatically on a semi-slack line, the weight slide to underneath the shin. And now the lure dive, and both props, the one in the nose and the one in the tail, both of them work when the lure is sinking down. And at the moment you start to retrieve, look, you see from here?
Yep.
Now the weight moves to the belly, and now you have the perfect weight position. And that's why for the sinking model, after many tests, I found the extra wide gap hook was the most convenient, fitting those needs of having that weight, being able to move, to be a mass transfer, going to the tail for better cast, to have a great swim action on the dive, and then to have the best position under the retrieve. And that's why this lure, the sinking model, you can work it literally from the top if you retrieve it quite fast, up to 10 or 12 foot deep. That means you can let it dive, and when you reach 10, 12 foot depth, if you have a super slow retrieve, like very super slow retrieve, then it will stay and keep that depth on most of your retrieve. Of course, when it comes close to the boat, it will go up.
Yeah.
So that's why you can use that on the top with a fast retrieve, or you can go pretty deep for this kind of bait. And just on the dive, remember, on the semi-slack line, it dives like that, and both props work on the depth. That's why you can pitch it, you can flip it, you can make a long cast in open water and just let it dive. And quite often a bass or other predator like a snook, a redfish, or tarpon may swallow and bite that bait on the dive alone.
Now,
so that is the sinking model.
Okay, I know people are going to ask me already. How many colors are they going to come in, and what is going to be the retail price of these?
Yeah, so basically, we're going to have the main delivery. We're going to have some much sooner, a little bit, but the main delivery will take place roughly around December. The big delivery that will allow us, because we have already a lot of inquiry. We have a lot of customer, and I'm talking not just anglers, I'm talking major retail chains and stuff like that who have already referenced that bait.
And how much are they going to be? How much do you know the retail price yet?
Yeah, so basically the sinking one is going to be $9.99,
okay.
And the top water one, which is a bit simpler, the top water one don't have a prop on the front, have only the blade, the same blade in the tail. That's why that one is allowed for very slow top water retrieve action, and that's why there's no weight. There's still a stopper here, so to make sure to keep the hook very well hidden in the back. And that guy is going to be $2 less. So basically $7.99 for the top water and $9.99 for the sinking.
Awesome.
model.
That's great prices. Okay, next we need to talk about, because we've been doing this for a little bit, the second product we're allowed to talk about is one that I think I saw I guess I saw it last year. I saw the first initial prototype, I think, when me, you, and David went fishing. It's the new Water Bull jig. Tell us about this. This has come full force. Tell us why you got into it, what was the thought process behind it, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so that's a prototype, the one I'm showing you. Well, I believe all of us knows that flipping, punching, pitching in heavy cover or near cover is a great way to catch bass. By the way, it's also good in saltwater for redfish and snook. They also like that action, even if it's not so much known. When you do so, first you need to have a jig that have a head that goes very well through heavy cover. And that was definitely one of the key. So David Bolema, my good friend, is great bass angler, is tournament angler, won a number of tournaments everywhere in the state of Florida. And one of his, really specialties is that, flipping, pitching, punching. And he came to me with a specific idea. He loved that there are two with guards. And of course, there's a few jighead and bucktails that have that on the market already. So he loved that. He knew that was very efficient. And he loved a certain shape of head with an angle to help. And you can see that angle, I hope, well enough here.
I have a picture of it. I can have a picture of it, too. I'll put a picture up.
Oh, cool. Yeah, because he found by tweaking on bucktails he found that having that cut in the front was really increasing how well the head was going through the heavy cover. And that was key. The other key was his experience, and I talked to many other specialists who are in love with pitching, flipping, punching. They know that even the best and strongest one on the market have hooks that are not strong enough to hold as well as they wish it can. And that was linked to the fact that typically, especially when you do punching, you're using heavy line, minimum 50, but very often 65, even 80-pound braid. Mm-hmm. So it's not about the bass itself. As we all know, the bass don't turn to be a gigantic fish. It's not an incredible fighter like a big tarpon or a jack and stuff like that. But when you fish that fish in very heavy mats, especially, like here we have a lot in Florida in many lakes, when you hook that fish and you hold that pressure and you bring the fish out of the cover, their hook end up to open. And I talked with David and a number of other tournament anglers who told me what they think were their best bucktails on the market. And they all say after a few weeks of use, sometime a big day of catching several big bass, they have to throw away the bucktail because the hook was just keep opening. And when the hook keep opening and you bend it back, every time you do so, you lose some of the stiffness of the metal.
Yeah.
And it's get easier and easier to lose that. And the second reason was because you have a weight that, in case especially of punching models that are quite heavy, when the bass jump and shake the head, that having a weight that's directly attached to the hook is the best way to help the bass to spit out the bait. And that's why a bass angler who use a live bait and just a single hook, well, in fact, lose much less fish in comparison than a guy who use a 1 ounce jig head. It's because when you fish with a live golden shiner and you have just that single hook, well, once you hook the bass, typically the shiner just goes away and there's only the hook in the fish mouth. When in the bucktail, every time the bass shake the head, you have that. So the strength of the hook was one thing. And I add to that the hook shape I designed when I was 16 years old, which is an inverse curve. So that means the bottom of the curve is closer to the shank than it's closer to the hook point. So thanks to that, once you set the hook and your bass is hooked on, the lip of the bass is here. When on a regular shaped hook, if you take the same opening, and those have actually the same opening, as you can see. I hope you can see that well on the screen.
Yep, I can
try
see it.
My best. So you can see, guys, that's the same opening. So if you take a round bend hook, which is the most shape for bass, this is when I put pressure, you see my little finger shows where the fish lip is.
Yes.
So the fish lip is only about 12 millimeters away from the hook point. So when the bass shake the head, the hook just need to move 13 millimeters to be out of the fish lip and for you to disengage with the fish, which means losing the fish. Now, you take my hook with the exact same opening, Now look, the distance between the fish lip and the hook point is now 24 millimeters for the same exact opening. So it's almost a bit short than 2 times the distance. So that means when the fish shake the head, it takes much longer for the hook to disengage.
Yeah,
and that's
spit.
why my hook on fish like tarpon, bass, snook is really a very advanced design that lends you many more fish. So that's why that whole thing together, the head design from David, my hook design, and strength, because when you pull hard, the pulling point is here, so it's very close from the shank. So that's why also my hook is much stronger than a round bend, where, as you can see, the hook point, you see, you can even see the hook opening when I do that, because the point of pressure is here. So there's some leverage here. The amount of leverage between my pressure point and the shank is here. It's very little leverage. And for those of you who know the physics, the least leverage you have, the more strength you have, in fact. So we've been testing that for a year now, and we've compared that very honestly with every single bucktail we can put our hand on from the market or handmade bucktails. With this guy, with 65-pound braid, I was trying to cast into heavy cover, not pitch or flip or punch, cast, make that 40, 50 yards cast in heavy cover and retrieve it and going free. I mean, the day we finalized that lure, and I'm not kidding you guys, David and I were together on the boat. I cast all day long. I snagged one time, casting all day long deep in heavy cover.
That's because of how strong those, what do they call those bristles on the top?
So the bristles are there, but it's really the combination of everything.
Oh, it's the body shape and everything.
If one of the elements was not right, that will snag much more. So it's really the original idea from Dave, which is really important. That flat around here helped to cut and go through the heavy cover. Now, also to have the eye very flush. The eye of the hook is very flush.
Yeah, I love that.
Very important. That's crazy. Some of the prototypes, the hook eye was only 2 or 3 millimeter outside of the head.
Yeah.
And 2 or 3 millimeter, we were catching a decent, not a lot, but a decent amount of grass. And just to flush it,
none.
That almost disappeared.
What weights are the? Well, I have a couple questions. First, Robert said, "What is the recommended bait for that jig? Is it a worm? And what size does length matter in the size?"
Mm-hmm. So thank you for your question. Really appreciate your calling and asking for question. So first, you can see there's a bait holder right here behind.
Yes, thank goodness.
So. Yes. So, many have that, so it's not the only one. Mm-hmm. So what I do right now is I'm working on some soft plastic to come sometime later that will fit perfectly, because I take advantage of the front shape, and with the right buoyance of plastic, once you pitch and let it fall, first it lands, goes flat, and very slowly, very naturally, the buoyance of plastic bait bring it back. So typically, and I'm saying typically, people we like to have short baits, like creatures and stuff like that on this kind of bait. And that's, of course, when you fish in heavy cover, mostly what we see as anglers, we see the top of the heavy cover, which looks like totally covered. I recommend people to do what I've done. Jump into it yourself.
Oh, okay.
Go watch from underneath. The cover is on the top. In fact, underneath, even in very heavy cover, like I think about Farm 13, for those of you who know that place, it's a great place for that kind of action. But in fact, when you go to the bottom you have the feet of the grass. So the cover came heavy really on the last half or third of the water column. But when you go to the bottom, where basically your lure is going to be, it's much more open water. So I believe we all have that misconception, because I had that for a number of years until I jumped, because I want to see by myself. Mm-hmm. I think we have that misconception that what we see on the top is the same all the way to the bottom.
Yeah.
No, the bottom is very open.
Yeah.
So for me, if you allow me to find it, Yeah.
Well, how many? What
And of
size
course,
is that going to come in? Is it going to be
well, in
1
that
ounce,
case,
2
that one,
ounce?
well, that one is 1 ounce and a quarter, but we
Okay.
will have different weights starting from 3/8.
Okay.
So we have a range.
Yeah.
And of course, the bait you may want to put on depend on that. But here's the lure with the 1 ounce and a quarter, which have a 6-0 hook. This is the lure I've been using with good success. That's my 6-inch long curly min. So it's a hyperelastic soft plastic. We released that last year. It's buoyant, and with the 1 ounce and a quarter, yep, you got it right.
Hold on,
That's it.
I'll put it up here. Oh, I got to switch
Yeah,
right
yeah,
there.
and you see the one. Yeah, and the one you have is the top water version. You can see the single hook unweighted. That guy, when you cast and retrieve, he makes a wake on the top.
Yeah.
So it's not just the tail that works. The body also have that swim action.
Mm-hmm.
So that same body, you put that on this guy. It fits perfectly, and every movement you have a curly tail action. That's great. I've missed a few bites, but honestly speaking, I'm very convinced based on the bite I had that I missed that were small fish just grabbing the tail. So do I care missing a 1 pound bass? Honestly, I don't. When I fish with 65-pound braid or 80-pound braid, I have one rod set with that's a snakehead rod from Japan. That's super stiff, incredibly stiff and sensitive. That one is set with, in fact, with 90-pound braid. That's the one I use in the most crazy place possible. That's why I like to use the 1 1/4 and this. When I do that because the fish I want to get there really are the solid ones. When I feed that kind of heavy place. So that's why using that 6-inch is probably not what most people will think of. And if you want to stick to your conventional trailers for bucktail, be it, that makes sense, that's good, that have worked for you, keep doing that. But me, I've been using that for the heavier one. Now, on smaller or lighter size, one of the bait I really did pretty well with on my test was my new, let me remove from that hook. I don't know if I have one rigged here already, maybe. Oh, it's in the tackle box. Yeah, it's in a fishing box. But
I can say
the worm stick.
Though, yeah, the worm stick. I can say that Patrick and I. I'll put myself back on the screen. Patrick and I had went fishing I don't even know. We were on Lake Conway, and I said to him, "Look, I'm just telling you right now. I used I think it was the 90 stick shad, and it was the only time we've been fishing that I outfished him. But he was using the giant stick shad, and he said to me, I'm going to let you catch all the baby ones you want. I want the big one. I don't want those pounders. I want the big fish. So, yes, bigger baits, bigger fish. So, yeah.
That is not a 100% rule, but that's relatively true.
Yeah.
When you make statistic. Now, people who fish only with small baits, of course, the big fish they caught were on small baits.
Yes.
But when you spend the same amount of time, of hours, fishing a small bait and a large bait, you definitely have much less bites on the large bait, but definitely you catch way more big fish on that. But now, are you willing to use a 1 1/4 and a 6-inch long curly min all day to maybe have only 5 bites? That's the question. Because definitely, if you use the half ounce, if you use the half ounce and you put the worm stick on it, or a DartSpin 4.5, the DartSpin, let me show you one. Well, it's not really on that, but here's a 4.5. The half ounce with the DartSpin 4.5 is fantastic, especially when you like to do flipping and punching. And once the lure is in the water, you let your line touch the grass and use that as leverage, and now you can jig. That's one of the great action. It's one of the things. There are some people who just flip or punch and then let the bait on the bottom and they just barely move the rod tip or not at all. It does catch some fish. But in fact, jigging. So even if it's 2 feet of water, you flip, you punch through a cover, you make sure your braid is touching the weed on top, and you just jig it. In that case, the DartSpin is fantastic because the blade works all the time. It goes through the heavy cover like a dream. And then when you have that action, even for just 4 or 6 inches, moving the rod tip 4-6 inches, that's what you're getting into the heavy cover. That's fantastic. So if you want to have more of a pause action, it's great to have a Burien bait. As I mentioned earlier on, when I put that bait on a 1 ounce and a quarter, he hits the bottom. With the energy, he goes flat for just maybe 2-3 seconds, and slowly he floats up all the way to that position, exactly like this. And that's why any little rod tip movement right away triggers some tail action from the curly min.
Yeah, well, that's great.
That's why I try to do that.
Now we're going to have other lures that we can talk about, but these were the two that we could focus on today. There's a lot more you've got a lot of stuff coming out in the next year. A lot of stuff. I know that personally. So, oh yes, yeah, we got the new, and of course you can always go to abandofanglers.com to see and find out more information about it. And Patrick's always, we're going to do this again. We just need to get permission before we do it. That's our thing. I don't want to piss anybody off. That's all. But I do think it's funny. So anyway, Patrick, we've been on here for 50 minutes, so I'm going to wrap this up. But I thank you very much for the time. We can do this again soon when the lures come out. Correct?
Yeah.
Please tell
do that again.
Please tell the twins I said hello and give them a hug from Uncle Steve, please, and a kiss. And more importantly, congratulations on the best of show. That was fantastic. It's well deserved. It's well deserved.
I didn't even look at the results. To be honest with you, I was about to drive to Fort Pierce. I had a meeting and video, because also we put together our own show at the same time as the iCast. We booked a platform that's that's literally like a virtual game.
Yes.
And we partner with a few companies like Yamamoto and Hokuma and O Coolers and American Fishing Wire as well. And we each have an island on that virtual world. And we were there receiving the retailer and media who want to come and visit us. You came. You were one of the very, very first on the first day we did that. So that's why I was really not thinking much, and then I got a message that we just won, and I was like, oh, that was my 24th, so I was really very happy.
That was the 24th.
I was not expecting.
That's the 24th lure that you've won a best of show with. Yeah,
my 24th award in my professional award in my career. Yes.
That is absolutely fantastic. Well, the lures speak for themselves. I'm happy I'm couldn't be happier for you for the win. I know we just have those two that we can talk about. When the new other ones we're allowed to talk about, we'll do this again. And I send my love to you and the kids, and thank you again for doing this, man.
Oh, thank you so much to you, Steve, and to everybody who joined us and watched or heard that interview. Thank you so much. See you on the water very soon.
Yes. Thank you, dude. I'm going to cancel here and finish with you. So hold on. Give me a second. Thanks, guys. Remember, take a kid fishing. Get your fish on. We'll talk to you soon.